I am just testing right now for sound.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on the Safe at Home Act. This is Lucas Binkin with the Government Relations team, and we're joined today by Secretary of State Pate and some key staff from the Secretary's office, and they will be discussing the Safe at Home program and answering any questions that you might have after the presentation. Just to note, you as the listeners will be muted, but you will have the ability to type in any questions that you may have. So please feel free to do that at any time, but we will address those questions at the end. And so with that, I will turn it over to Secretary Pate.
Thank you, Lucas. And I want to thank ISAC for giving us this opportunity to visit with you. The Safe at Home is a very successful program already, and we haven't even officially launched it, in the sense that we are giving victims of violent crime some hope that they can resume a big part of their private life that they perhaps had to put away because of fear of having their stalker or their abuser find them again. I want to thank those who helped with the bill, specifically Megan Kleinman, the Davis County Recorder, and Carla Becker, the Delaware County Auditor. They were a big part of this program. And of course, the sponsor himself was State Representative Dean Fisher, who really spearheaded a lot of the hard work. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, Safe at Home is an address confidentiality program that helps survivors be able to, again, live their lives and have certain services that they might not seek out because of fear of their abuser finding them again. We are providing them a substitute address that will assign those participants this special address that our office will be administering so that they can resume again their life. They can have a voter registration, library cards, they'll have a driver's license issued by the state of Iowa or a state identification card. We'll provide a mail forwarding service basically so that people who are corresponding with them will be sending it to an address we will be supporting, and we will forward it to the person who has been a victim, and we would like to think on the survivors that they'll be moving forward. Many of you know this, so I don't want to preach to the choir, but the fact that we have over 20,000 people on the average seeking services because of domestic violence here in Iowa. We have an average of 23,000 no-contact orders each year. We have an average of over 2,600 abuse convictions each year, and these are just the numbers we have reported. There are far more than that. We know that, and we think this program is going to help give some of these folks back, again, a part of their life. We are the 34th state to implement a Safe at Home. It's way past due. We had over 20 roundtable discussions in many of your communities. They were very successful. They gave us a chance to get more information about what they want in a program, and also for us to share information about the program so that they would support it and encourage others to get involved in it. We met with local elected officials, some of you. We met with sheriffs, police chiefs, people, county attorneys. We're meeting with the Supreme Court folks here in about a week to try to make sure we're all on the same page, because this is a program we're not really, frankly, sure if we're going to have 500 people in it or several thousand, because this is a very sensitive area. Many people don't wish to come forward in any way. We're working very closely with domestic abuse advocates. We just met with them, in fact, this morning with their boards, and we've been meeting with them on a regular basis because they'll be the front line. They'll be the ones who will be counseling and coaching these individuals to get this kind of help as we go forward with this. There are a lot of good things to this. The legislature passed this overwhelmingly. There was 99 to 0 in the House and 50 to 0 in the Senate, and we're very pleased to have that kind of legislative support. But to be successful, we need to have you in the county level, because these individuals are in your communities, and in many cases they're in a rural setting where they don't have a lot of the programs that you might see in the metro centers. So this is just one more tool that we want to offer up. So with me today I have my deputy, Kara Olson, who oversees our elections and also is our lead on the Safe at Home. As well, I have Christy Johnson, who is our Safe at Home gatekeeper, if you will, the one who will be the point person specifically for this program as we're going forward on this. We are unveiling this formally January 1st. That's what the legislative mandate was. We're housing this in our Secretary of State office, and we don't claim to be the experts on domestic violence, but we are very good administrators, and that's our key part here. We're the administrators of this program. We're working with them on their voter registration component, obviously, but we're also working with the other areas that they interact with government. So I'm going to turn it over to Christy, who's going to walk you through a PowerPoint, and she and Carol both will touch base on many of these issues, and of course we'll be taking more questions. And this is a work in progress. We're evolving every day as we get more suggestions from our stakeholders and our partners. Thank you very much again. Christy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Secretary Fay. So first, like you said, Safe at Home is an address confidentiality program that helps victims of domestic abuse, sexual assault, trafficking, and other violent crimes become survivors and have active lives within our communities with services from the Secretary's office. And these services include a substitute address, a mail forwarding service, and confidential voter registration and absentee ballot voting. Understanding what Safe at Home is important, but it's also important to understand what Safe at Home is not. And Safe at Home is not a witness protection program. It's also not able to redact previous records, and it's not able to shield participants from legal obligations such as custody disputes. So we're not able to redact any previous records. So if a participant's address is already on their driver's license, or if they've already registered to vote, we are not able to redact those records. Those are already public records. So it's important to let the participant know that it's not able to be redacted, so they have to have recently relocated. So who can apply for Safe at Home? Any adult victim or survivor of domestic violence, sexual assault, trafficking, stalking, or any other violent crime, any family member or any other person that's living in the home can apply for Safe at Home. The eligible person has to have taken some kind of legal action against their offender, and they have to be an Iowa resident. So how do survivors apply to be Safe at Home participants? Right now we're working on the application, and at this time we are anticipating that we will have application assistance across the state of Iowa, and that we'll have applications available on our website. We've seen across the nation that application assistance are required by Safe at Home programs, and we decided that we didn't want to have this barrier for Safe at Home participants or applicants, but we wanted to have it as an option as well, so that when survivors wanted to have the option to have somebody assist them with the application, they had that option. But we also wanted them to have the option to independently fill out that application and have that independence when they wanted it. And we are anticipating that applications will be available mid-December. The program goes live January 1st, but we do want them to be able to fill out the applications and turn them into our office mid-December. That way, if we do get a backlog or a significant amount, we can go ahead and process them, and then starting January 1st, they can start using their designated address. So what are application assistants? Application assistants will be advocates from the Iowa Coalition Against Domestic Abuse and Iowa Coalition Against Sexual Assault. Like Secretary Pate said, we are not experts on counseling, and we are not located across the state. We're located in Des Moines. So we've partnered with these two coalitions, and they will train their advocates across the state on what our application looks like, what our program looks like, and they will help survivors across the state fill out the application, and they'll educate them on our program, and they'll be available, like I said, across the state to help them with their application and just to educate them about the program. And this is what our application looks like right now. It's still pretty early, and so it may change throughout the process. So right now, it just has basic information that we're asking. Up at the top, we'll have, the certification date, the person's initials who goes over it in our office, and then you see the apartment number. That'll be the distinguishing factor for the designated address, which I'll go over a little bit later. And then if you look at the bottom, there are questions that we'll go over a little bit later, but it's just questions that come from the bill, and questions like if you look at the bottom, would you like Safe at Home to open legal mail, and just different options for the participant or the applicant to go through. But if you look at it, it's a very simple application, and it's just very straightforward. The back side of the application, which I haven't shown you, and I don't have a picture of it, but it will have statements that come from the bill that are requirements that the participant or the applicant have to meet, and they'll initial it. And this will be statements such as, I am a victim of abuse, and I have taken action against my offender, and they'll have to initial it. We are taking applications at face value, and so they aren't going to have to turn in police documentation or any kind of evidence that they have taken this action against their offender, but they will just have to initial that they have. All right. So one question that we've been getting a lot is, how do I know that a participant or a person is a participant? Each participant, once accepted into the program, will have a Safe at Home verification card. We're working on what this will look like, and once we know, we will let you know what it looks like. And then once they show you that card, if you still have questions or would like to verify that they are still a participant, you can call the Safe at Home office, and we can verify, yes, they are a participant, or no, they're not a participant. A participant's address is confidential, but their participation in the program is not confidential. So we will tell you, yes, they are a participant, no, they're not a participant, but we will not give you any other information. So where will their designated address appear? This will appear on their driver's license, non-operator's ID, student records, current employment records, library cards. This will basically appear anywhere that you see an address. This will appear on city level, county level, state level, and documentation. Will agencies be notified when a participant is terminated from the program? There will be instances where a participant can be terminated from the program. For instance, if a participant changes their address and does not notify Safe at Home staff and does not respond to our inquiries on where they live, they can be terminated by the program. And we've been asked several times if agencies will be notified. The answer is no, but when you send mail to their Safe at Home designated address, we will no longer be able to forward their mail, and so we will send it back to you. And so that will be your notification that they are no longer part of the program. Now, when you receive it back into your office, if you question that, you can call us and ask them if they've been terminated from the program, ask if they're still a participant, and again, we can tell you, yes, they're a participant, no, they're not a participant, and that will be your indication that no, they're not a participant any longer. So what will this substitute address look like? Most likely, this substitute address will be a P.O. box, and each participant will have the same address. The only difference will be that after the P.O. box or the street address, they'll have a lot number or apartment number that will distinguish each participant from one another. That way, if we have two participants with the same name, or if there's a misspelling in the last name and they have the same first name, then we still have some kind of distinguishing factor to where we know where to send their mail. The actual address will be known by the Safe at Home staff, and that will be it. This won't be known by any other state agency, city agency, county official. It won't even be known by the Secretary of State's office. It will only be known by the Safe at Home staff within the Secretary of State's office. Okay? This will be a Des Moines address. So for 98 counties, this will be easily identifiable. For Polk County, this will be a little bit more tricky. Participants can use the Safe at Home address anywhere where a mailing address is required. All right, so for those services that require that they live within the district, how do you know that they live within the district if they are using their designated address, which is in Polk County? In these cases, you would have to call the Safe at Home staff, or you would have to write us on official letterhead and request that we look up and verify that they live within your district. We do have to have this in writing, so this is our way to verify that this is a legitimate request. And then we will call you and tell you, yes, they live in this district, no, they don't live in this district. And then the mail forwarding service. So all participants will receive this designated address, and they'll use this as their mailing address for all of their mail. Their mail will then get sent to the Secretary of State's office, and then we will forward it on to the participant. We have had some questions on this, or some concerns that this will delay the mail, and yes, this will delay their mail because it's not going straight to the participant, but it will come to the Secretary of State's office and then the participant. However, we are going to process the mail the same business day that is received within the office. The only time that it wouldn't be received and processed the same day is if we were to close the office. So in the case of a snowstorm or ice storm and the office is closed, which doesn't happen very often, it wouldn't be processed the same day, but we're not anticipating that to happen. Otherwise, it will get processed and mailed out that same day. It is important to note that we will not be sending out any packages unless they're prescription or government packages. And this is a safety concern. We cannot be forwarding on packages in case they're coming from the offender and they are tracking devices and other dangerous things. So we have eliminated those packages. So only prescription packages and government packages will be forwarded. Another issue that that's been brought to our attention is legal mail and with the delay. And we've talked with several other states, and the way that they have handled this is that they have given the participants the option to have the office open legal mail. So mail that comes from courthouses, attorneys, or the Attorney General is opened by the staff, it's read, and the action by the participant and the date of when this action has to be taken is noted by the staff. If it's within 2 weeks, then the Safe at Home staff will call the participant that same day and notify them of what action needs to be taken and when that action needs to be taken so that the participant knows when and what they need to do. They will also mail out that piece of mail that same day, so they'll be notified by phone, and that mail will be forwarded on that same day. And so that is something that we are working with and thinking over, and so we've been talking with the Iowa Bar Association and other agencies to see if that's something that we should and will offer participants. And I'm going to hand it over to Carol Olson now.
Excuse us while we had to switch chairs there. There are going to be instances when a participant in the Safe at Home program will have legal entanglements. It could be something that they are the principal object of that investigation, or it could be that they are needing to be contributing some information to help with the investigation for somebody else. In the case when a participant in the Safe at Home program needs to be served as the agent of service, the Secretary of State will serve as that program participant's agent of service. That is something that all participants in the Safe at Home program have to agree to in order to participate. And so if you need to serve notice to an individual who is a participant, you can serve that either by contacting our office if we are then affirming that that person is involved in the program, and you can serve notice to us via mail, or if you are wanting to serve that notice to us, you can personally deliver that service of notice to the Secretary of State's office. To the Secretary of State's office. The Act, the law, does specify that once the service of process has been received at the Secretary of State's office, that does constitute acceptance of service of process. We will then, the Secretary of State's office will then forward that service of process to the participant at their residential address via certified mail. If the participant refuses that service of process for any reason, we do have the opportunity to terminate them from the program if that should be the case. Another matter that we will be addressing is voter registration and absentee voting. Voting registration is one of the easiest ways that someone can identify the address of a participant. And that is why when our participants in the Safe at Home program will be registering to vote through the Secretary of State's office, not through the county auditor, which is the usual manner of doing that. Counties will not have office to that voter registration then, and that those participants we will have a separate voter registration system for the participants in the Safe at Home program. That way we can be sure that should there be a request for any voter registration information or voter registration list, that those participants' names will not be included on the voter registration form. Similarly, if persons are requesting an absentee ballot for everyone else, that's public information. And so if a participant in the Safe at Home program wishes to vote, they will have to vote by absentee ballot. The way that that will happen is that we will provide all of the participants in the Safe at Home program the opportunity to register for elections on an annual basis, and so they can specify which elections, for example, in the year 2016, they wish to participate in. That way, we will have, the Secretary of State's office will have the maximum amount of time in order to request the absentee ballot from the proper precinct from the county auditor based on the address library that we have. The county auditor will send that absentee ballot to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State then will forward that absentee ballot to the Safe at Home participant. After the Safe at Home participant has voted that absentee ballot, they'll return that to the Secretary of State's office, and then the Secretary of State's office will then forward that to the county auditor for canvassing and for proper tabulation. Admittedly, there's a lot of steps in the process, and so we anticipate that we will be contacting and working very closely with our Safe at Home participants to make sure that they do that, request those absentee ballots with as much lead time as possible. We will not be recommending that Safe at Home participants vote at the polls. If they were to vote at the polls, they would have to vote by same-day registration, because the county auditors will not have their registration, because that is a separate process, and we would be discouraging all Safe at Home participants from voting at the polls. The real estate question is something that we worked on extensively during the legislative session, and ended up deciding that we needed to exempt real estate transactions from the Safe at Home law, because there was not any way that we could come up with a way to safely cover the participant's name from that real estate record, and to still enable the real estate search process to be able to take place in the manner that you need to do it so that you can do your title searches. As an alternative, so that persons who are participating in the program could buy a home, they would be able to work with their own attorney for the possibility of purchasing that home through an LLC or through a trust. Our office is working with the Iowa State Bar Association to have information that we will provide to all Safe at Home participants if they should be wanting to purchase a home. And we would be encouraging Safe at Home participants to always work with an attorney if they are going to be buying a home, so that those records can be drafted properly. Christy already touched on a couple of the issues that we often hear about from agencies, but here's a couple more of those, and we'll try to answer those as well. There are a number of databases that are held by both local government offices as well as by state government offices that presently require a physical address. Those processes will need to be modified for Safe at Home participants so that they will accept that P.O. box. And then in the instances where you need to verify that that participant does indeed live in that jurisdiction, the Secretary of State's office and the Safe at Home office will verify that information for you. There are also some federal agencies that also require that a physical address be required. We are working with the federal government because the federal government does acknowledge that confidential address programs are a legitimate way to utilize addressing. And so, but we are working with the federal government to determine when are those instances when the Safe at Home address will be available. We've also had some questions, since every address will be a Polk County address, if Polk County will be receiving the tax benefits, as well as if they will sometimes be receiving the financial obligations, such as mental health services. And the county of actual residence will be regarded as the financial benefactor or the financial obligator for whatever services that might be appropriate for those residents. We are not changing the legal residence of the participants. We are only changing their mailing address. We've also had questions about the accidental or unintentional disclosure of a participant's real address. And there is included in the Safe at Home Act a waiver from liability in the event of accidental disclosure of information, and there is not a specific penalty for that, but the Secretary of State's office and the Safe at Home program are going to utilize every precaution available to make sure that that information will not be revealed. And we will also work with local entities that when they do receive information that a participant is living in their area, that they will not be disclosing that to in the public records. The enrollment period is for 4 years, although the Secretary of State's office can terminate a person's participation in the program prior to that 4 years, and that expiration date will appear on their ID card. So if you are receiving an ID card and the time has lapsed since the program, their enrollment in the program has expired, then you'll know that that's not a valid ID card for them. However, the participation in the program is pretty fluid, that as we may terminate somebody from the program prior to the expiration date, if that person should choose to re-enroll, they certainly can re-enroll. Also, there will be instances when a participant has voluntarily terminated themselves from the program or is voluntarily withdrawn from the program, and in that case, they also can re-enroll at some point in time already down the road. Christy mentioned that the program will not erase or redact records which are already public information. We are only going to be erasing the public records from the point in time going forward. So those records which you now have current custody of, we are not going to be expecting you to change any of those records. The Safe at Home address, though, is under the complete control of the person who is the participant in the program. They can decide when they're going to use their designated address and when they can use their confidential address. For example, in the instance of an emergency and there would be a 911 call, if the participant in the program needs to let the 911 dispatcher know where they're at, they absolutely will be able to provide that information to the dispatcher in order to receive that emergency service. They will also be able to provide their confidential address or their residential address, for example, to the Department of Corrections if their offender has been incarcerated. So they are in control of when it's appropriate to use a designated address and when it's appropriate for them to use their confidential address. We will be advising them, as will be the advocacy agencies, to use their designated address, which is their safe at home address, as much as is possible and preferably all of the time. We now have a couple of scenarios. In the Secretary of State's office, we like to use kind of sample case studies to kind of help you figure out a what-if scenario. And so Christy is going to lead us now through some of those scenarios.
Okay, so Taylor walks into the recorder's office and is applying for a hunting license. He pulls out his Safe at Home authorization card and lets you know that he's a participant in Safe at Home and will be using this for his residential address. What do you do, and what options do you have? All right. So here, they've already shown you their authorization card. You'd first want to check to make sure that the expiration date hasn't already passed and that it's still a valid authorization card. If it's already passed, you'll want to call the Secretary of State's office or the Safe at Home staff. If you are questioning whether this is a participant still or not, you can call the Safe at Home staff and just verify that they're still a participant. We will have no problem verifying this and telling you yes or no that they're a participant. So just look at that card, use that address as their residential and their mailing address for that application. And this will hold true for their hunting license or for any forms that they are filling out in your office. Okay, so the next scenario, Sam tries to use her Safe at Home address on a vehicle registration form, and you ask to see her authorization card, and you notice that it's expired. What do you do? So in this case, you've already checked the expiration date, so very good. So you call the Safe at Home program, and we'll check to make sure that there's no errors and that it's actually expired, or that she hasn't reapplied and she just has the wrong Safe at Home card for some reason. So we'll check for all of that. If the participant has expired and been canceled or withdrawn from the program, keep that card and mail it back to our office and we'll shred the card. At this time, go ahead and talk to Sam. And talk to her, tell her that you can't use that Safe at Home designated address at that time. She can either re-enroll into the program and then use that designated address after she's been approved into the program, or if she wants to use her actual address at that time, she can do so. So kind of give her that option if she wants to wait until she's reapplied to use that address, or if she wants to use her actual address. But at that time, since she has an expired card and she's not in the program, then she cannot use that designated address, okay? And we're going to ask that you keep that card and have us shred it so that we can maintain the integrity of the program. All right. In our last scenario, Jordan goes to the library and applies for a library card. His address is a Des Moines address, which would be out of your jurisdiction for his application. He explains that he's a Safe at Home participant and pulls out his authorization card. How do you verify that he lives in the correct district when he uses his confidential address? So here you'll have to send a written inquiry to the Safe at Home program with the participant's name and the reason for needing the information, and then the district that you need verified, and then a phone number that we can reach you. That phone number is going to be very important so that we can contact you. This inquiry for the district can be made by mail or by email, but it does need to be on official letterhead so that we can make sure that it is a legitimate inquiry, okay? We just need it to be written out. We can't take these requests over the phone. It has to be written out. Now, if you just need to know if they're a participant, that can be over the phone. But for these ones, for the districts, we do have to have it in writing. And then you'll receive that feedback on if they live in the district by a phone call, yes or no. So you'll get that answer back pretty quick. All right, the Safe at Home timeline. Do you want to do that? All right, so last week we had a very exciting week. Our website went live, and so that URL is safeathome.iowa.gov, and I'll show it to you here in a second. Our brochures also are available. They're being passed out at the state fair, and hopefully you'll see them in your courthouse shortly. And currently at the office, we are working on developing our forms and researching and visiting with other states who have successful Safe at Home programs, and just kind of talking to them, seeing what works and what doesn't work in their states, and just modeling our program off of theirs. Applications submissions will begin mid-December, like we said, and then the program goes into effect January 1st, 2016. And we do have some important dates coming up to keep on your radar. Safe at Home conferences, and this will just be an informative meeting that we'll have at the Wallace Building here in Des Moines. And those dates we'll have 4 available will be September 17th and 18th, November 17th and 24th. And this will just be a short hour-long informational meeting that you can come to or have your staff come to. And this will also be a great opportunity to have your staff or yourself ask different questions if you have somewhere that come up. We also have articles coming up in different publications throughout the state. So this will be a great place for you to have more information available and to see, hopefully see that verification, the authorization card and some other things we're hoping. So keep your eyes out for those. And then here's what our brochure looks like. It has some helpful hints and a greeting from the secretary. It's very eye-catching and straight to the point for the participants. And then inside, it's just straight to the point again. It tells you who's eligible to be in Safe at Home, how you apply for Safe at Home, and what it is. And then it also explains what Safe at Home is not. So hopefully you'll see those in your courthouses soon. And then here's what our website looks like. It has if you look up in the right-hand corner, it has this escape button where it says escape this website. This is a tool that we've seen on the coalition's websites and other abuse-centered websites for survivors and victims, where if their offender comes into the room, they can quickly click on this button and it takes them directly to a different website. Ours takes you to weather.com, and it zeroes in on your location, so no matter where they are, if they're on vacation, it'll take them into their location and it'll show their weather for their current location. We also have buttons that go to the 2 coalitions websites that we've partnered with, so this will take them to resources that will be handy for them. And then this homepage just kind of explains what the program is and why it's important, and it gives important dates. This will also give participants safety tips, frequently asked questions, and then access to the brochure under publications. So how can you help us? If you have groups or meetings that you have that you would like us to come to present Safe at Home information to, please let us know. Or if there's an organization or a group that you think we should contact, please let us know so we can reach out to them. If you could have brochures out in your office for survivors as they come in so that they can just easily pick them up, that would be very helpful. If you could answer questions and promote the program among other county and city elected officials and agencies, that would be very helpful. And we're looking for work group members so that we can ask questions and see how your agencies work. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to us and let us know. And then when you have questions, please ask. And we have been getting questions that bring up different issues that we haven't thought of, so this is very helpful for us. So please ask those questions that you have. All right, and so this is our contact information for myself and for Carol. And then at the bottom, there's also an email address for Safe at Home. I will be the main contact for Safe at Home, so that is my direct line and then my direct email. But if participants or survivors want a more, don't want someone by direct email, they could do the safeathome@iowa.gov. And then if I'm unavailable, Carol Olson would be the second contact person. All right, and so we'll start taking questions now.
We have a couple of questions that have already been submitted, but please feel free to go ahead and keep typing those in, and then we'll just set up a list of those questions and we'll address them as they were received.
All right, so the first question is, the certification is for 4 years. Will the local governments be notified to remove ownership from all records and notified again when the 4-year certification is withdrawn or renewed? They will not be notified. This will be kind of like when the termination is. They won't be notified, but when the participant is no longer in the program, if you mail them stuff, we will send it back to the sender. So that will be kind of your notification that they're no longer in the program. And then if you do question if they're in the program or not still, you can call us to have us check and see if they are still in the program. So your main indication will be that expiration date on their authorization card and then the mail that's been returned to sender. Okay, what is the turnaround time to get confirmation on whether someone lives in my district, and will you be able to confirm how long they have been there for? The turnaround time, I would hope, would be rather quick, depending on how we receive it. If it's received, if you mail it, snail mail, it'll take a little longer, of course. If you email it, it'll be much quicker. If you need it right away, if they are waiting in the office, send that email on the official letterhead and give us a call. Tell us, they're waiting in the office, and we'll go ahead and verify it really quick. As far as how long they've been living there for, I'm not sure that we'll be able to, but we'll look into that.
Another question we had is, if a participant is involved in a police investigation and listed on the police report, can they provide the police report their safe at home address? And the answer to that question is yes. They will absolutely be able to provide their safe at home address. As we have been visiting with law enforcement across the state, and yesterday with the Department of Public Safety, we have been, in absolutely every single case, have been warmly and enthusiastically received by the law enforcement. This would include local city police stations as well as county sheriff's department and the highway patrol office, and they have, without exception, been cooperative and positive in recognizing that people who are victims of domestic violence deserve the opportunity to be protected. So they can use their safe at home address. If there is a need for local law enforcement to have somebody's confidential address, in other words, the place where they live, the local law enforcement will need to channel that request through the Department of Public Safety. And the Department of Public Safety is in the process of developing the procedures by which that process will take place. And that's because Christy and I in the Safe at Home office do not have the ability to discern what's a bona fide law enforcement request versus what might be something which is a fake request that is being manipulated by a potential offender who's trying to locate their victim. We have learned repeatedly that the offenders are ingenious and persistent and can utilize all kinds of methods, many times which appear legitimate, to find the address of their offender. So we will be taking every precaution to withhold that information in whatever way is possible. Another question that was related to that is if we're going to notify police officers of their Safe at Home address. The Safe at Home program is not going to notify any agency explicitly of the participants' enrollment in the Safe at Home program. If we get a specific inquiry, we will either confirm or deny whether someone is involved in the Safe at Home address, and we would provide their physical address only if that request is channeled through the Department of Public Safety.
Okay, another question that we had is, how is residency defined for their house, for this house file? A person who moves here from another state to escape their situation would not be eligible until they became a resident. So in this case, the way that we are going to verify that they are a resident is by the address that they give us on their application. So they don't have to be a resident for any certain amount of time, but the mail that the mailing address that we would be mailing their address or their mail to would have to be an Iowa address. So they would have to have relocated within Iowa. So that's how we are going to define Iowa resident. Okay, another question kind of related is, will addresses also be used at the federal level? Is federal income tax, state income tax, etc.? So in this case, this will be used, their designated address will be used as their mailing address. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
No. Another question we had is, what about the absentee deadlines and the anticipated mail delay? We are, the current absentee deadlines will remain the same. We will not be exempting participants in the Safe at Home program from the absentee deadline request. When the Safe at Home program receives an absentee request that needs to be handled expeditiously, we have decided that we will at times be using overnight mail in order to process those requests and the subsequent ballots in a timely fashion. There was another question is this section of the bill, which is section 6 of the bill, does not apply to documents on records relating to real property. And the questioner says, does this mean that the property owner can have their identity shielded by an LLC or a trust? And therefore, and the answer to that is yes, that they would be encouraged to use an LLC or a trust. And then the follow-up question to that is, so therefore the local assessor, recorder, or auditor will not have to take any special precaution with mapping, and that is correct. It is our belief that the LLC or the trust should provide the sufficient mask over that person's real identity. And again, we would be advising any Safe at Home participant to be consulting with an attorney as to just how to put together that LLC or that trust.
Okay, another question is there a process to prevent fraudulent applications? For example, a defendant applies on behalf of their victim to become the receiver of their victim's mail. So in this case, we are taking the applications at face value, and they do have to sign a statement saying that they are who they are. So that's kind of the process that we have at this time. Now, if there's like a cancellation or a change of address, they do have to sign that, and we are going to be comparing signatures so that we can try to avoid their offender from trying to change their address so that they receive their mail. Do you have anything to add to that?
Right. We're not going to explicitly be looking out for fraud. If it becomes evident that someone has falsely applied for the program, that they're not really a person at risk, then we will certainly be terminating them from the program. We are requiring a wet signature, in other words, a real signature, for the exact purpose that we want to make sure that the participant is truly enrolling themselves, but even more importantly, that the participant is terminating themselves if that's the appropriate time, because we wouldn't want an offender to terminate someone's enrollment in the program for that offender's purposes. And so we don't believe that people are going to be wanting to participate in this program unless they have a real bona fide need because of violence.
Okay, another question. Do we redact addresses in our 911 system after the dispatch call is made to the physical address? Like Carol said, we did meet with the Department of Public Safety yesterday, and we are working on this process right now, but it does sound like we will be redacting the physical address and not releasing that to the public and having it on public records if it is known that the participant is a Safe at Home participant when they make a 911 call.
Another question is, and thank you for these great questions, by the way, and some of them are really tough. So motor vehicle registrations are county specific, and so the writer of this question is saying that they understand then that all people presenting a Safe at Home card will require a written verification with the Safe at Home program to confirm that they live in the specific county prior to processing a motor vehicle registration, and that is correct. And so they will need to provide us that written inquiry, and then we will be able to affirm that that particular applicant is indeed a resident of that particular county.
Okay, another question is, some communities cross county lines. Will you verify the county the address falls in for the application? Yes, if it's needed to know what county the participant lives in, we will verify that if the request is made in writing.
This is a follow-up question in regards to service of process, and the question is, does serving the Secretary of State count as a personal services in regards to serving legal departments to the participant? I'm not sure I totally understand that question, but yes, when you serve the Secretary of State's office, that does constitute successful service of process. So when that service is formally received in the Secretary of State's office, whether it be via mail or fax or by personal delivery to the office, that does constitute successful completion of service of process.
What if they apply for a passport? Which address should they use on the application?
To be honest, we don't know exactly how to answer that question. I passed that off to Christy, and you know, passport is a federal document, and we do know that the Safe at Home program, the address confidentiality program, is recognized by the federal government as a viable alternative. One of the questions I would ask is, to what extent is passport information public information? And we will delve into that question, and we will try to find more information about that. If a resident is moving in from out of state and trying to obtain a driver's license, currently we require 2 proofs of residency at the physical address. What does Safe at Home require for proof of residency to obtain address authorization? We've been working closely with the Department of Motor Vehicles on driver's licensing, and they are in the process of rewriting their rules and determining what will be those rules that because the driver's licensing will include a post office box, not a physical address. So in terms of the 2 proofs of residency, we're going to need to get that from the Department of Motor Vehicles to be able to answer that question. So that is another question that we will have to get back to that on.
Okay. Another question, how do we handle permit requests for construction and water or sewer services? For this one, you will need the physical address from the participant in order to complete those services. Like we said, the participant does have total control over who has their actual address. So in the cases that the services are impossible to complete without their address being given, they will have to give that address to them. But for all documentation, billing, please use that designated address, but then to complete the services, use that physical address.
And here's another real estate question. All real estate owners would have a mailing address in the real estate system. And then how is this handled if the applicant is in our program? The mailing address is their safe at home address. Because real estate transactions will probably be held through an LLC or a trust, it's also a possibility that they might be using an attorney's office as the address, as their agent of record for that real estate transaction. And then similarly, another question in regards to the homestead credit. If a person who is in the Safe at Home program wants to sign up for homestead credit, and yes, they would be using the P.O. box also then for their mailing address.
When mail is returned to a government office agency, once the participant is no longer in the program, will Safe at Home provide a current residential address? In that case, we will not provide a current residential address. As far as I know, we will never provide an address for a Safe at Home participant, whether current or former.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions at the moment, but maybe we'll give them a couple minutes to just send some final inquiries.
And there are many of these questions that we will need to be resolving, and many of these questions that are not our expertise. And so the agencies that are involved with those specific programs, such as the driver's license question, are the ones who are going to need to answer those questions. And so we appreciate those questions. We will attempt to get those answers. That's one of the reasons why we had the programs be implemented or go into effect on January 1st, to give us the time to answer many of these questions and to get many of these details worked out.
Just had a question. What do we do for new addresses in the county? Do you need a little more detail on that? Whoever submitted that, could you just give a little more clarification on what you're referring to? I'm not sure if I need
that. The question was, what do we do for new addresses in the county? And we're not entirely sure what that means, but a new resident in the county would be using their Safe at Home address for all purposes related to local business. If they're questioning, you have a new development or a new subdivision that would be utilized, that is a bona fide address and would be their confidential address, and that would be the address that they have of record in the Secretary of State's office.
Okay, one more question. Do you have some kind of number of people you are anticipating getting these cards?
We anticipate that by a year from now, so after the program has been in effect for roughly 6 months, that we're thinking that it will be about 150 persons who would be involved in the first 6 months. But then after that, that it will grow significantly, and that so a year and a half from now or 2 years from now, that it will be closer to several hundred, perhaps up to 1,000 people. We will be working very hard to promote the information to participants. And on the one hand, we want those numbers to be large so that people are then taking positive steps to take their life back and to be able to return to a sense of safety. But on the other hand, we really don't want to have We would love to have a situation a few years down the road where we don't need this program anymore. That would be absolutely wonderful if we can work ourselves and everybody has graduated out of the program. Realistically, that's not going to be the case. And so, but we anticipate that we'll have perhaps upwards of 1,000 persons that we will be working with. The people move in and out of the program, so over the course of time, there will be people who will see it, then they might leave the program, and then they might come back again.
Another question. At what point will brochures be available, and do we just email SAH to obtain those for distribution?
Brochures are available right now. They're at the state fair, and they're in our office. We have currently 50,000. And we gave a box full to the two coalitions today. So if you would like some, yes, please email me, and we can work something out and try and get those to you.
And we visited with folks here in the ISAC offices a month or so ago, and they indicated a willingness to help distribute those brochures to your offices. And so we'll probably bring another box over here to the ISAC offices, and they will then help to distribute those to each of your respective county offices, for which we really appreciate that ISAC is being so helpful in getting this message out.
Oh, they were asking about whether or not the PowerPoint would be available for future reference. And yes, this is going to be the recording of this webinar, and the PowerPoint and the other handout materials will be available on the ISAC website. I understand that an SAH participant isn't to vote in person on election day, but what if they show up at the auditor's office and want to vote absentee? How will we know what ballot style to give them because of our different districts?
When a safe at home participant shows up either in the auditor's office or at an absentee satellite office or at a precinct polling place, because while we don't want them to do that, we anticipate that some of them will, that the excitement of the election is something that they want to participate in, and they just kind of forget that they shouldn't be doing that. And so when they show up at the office and the identification that they are showing is the safe at home address, at that time we would advise the auditor's offices to advise the participant that if you vote, your name will become a part of the public record. If the participant shows up at the polling place and you have the precinct officials then who are working with this individual, the same-day registration processes would go into effect, and that's the case where the participant would need to show 2 forms of ID and would need to prove where their residential address is. If a program participant chooses to do that, there's nothing that any of us can do to prevent them from doing that. It would be our hope that once they are in the midst of that, they will all of a sudden realize that this is not something that they should be doing, and that they will then voluntarily suspend that process. But if they do come with the forms of identification that are necessary for same-day registration, the precinct officials will process them like they would any other same-day registrant. Thank you again very much. This has been a great presentation, a great opportunity for us to be able to partner. The county elected officials and their staffs are probably the most important constituency for the Secretary of State's office, and we greatly value the partnership. So thank you so very, very much.
Yes, thank you.
And thanks, everyone, and thank you to the Secretary of State's office for putting together the presentation, and a lot of great questions. And I know that it's one of those programs that there will always be questions. It'll probably always be a work in progress progress, but we appreciate you giving us what you have now, and of course we'll be in contact as the program moves forward, and look forward to an ongoing relationship between the counties and the Secretary of State's office to make sure that this is successful. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in, and as Tammy said, the presentation and all of the materials will be available on the ISAC website. Thank you.